My name is David Stry. I am the national chairman of this. So far, it's going to be a huge success. We're going to have a wonderful time at this convention. It will be a spiritual revival for you folks to meet each other and to be with like-minded people. You folks have come from all over. We have almost every state of the Union in the registration files as of today only. And as is the case in past conventions, we always have registrations almost every day. People come in even the last day of the convention, so even bigger will be the crowd than is here tonight. It is my pleasure as chairman of this convention to welcome all of you here, and we hope that you will learn a lot, that you will go away greatly benefited. Without stealing the show by saying too much in introductory remarks, I would like to introduce our good friend Dr. Chris John Curcio, one of the foremost men in our movement. He will give the welcoming address to the hygienists here. Dr. Curcio.
It's with great pleasure that I welcome all of you here tonight. There isn't much that I can say that cannot come from the depth of my heart regarding this great cause. We have here tonight an opportunity to push forward this great renaissance in natural hygiene. And it's with great joy that I make known to you this great responsibility that you have. Now, when I say Renaissance, what do I mean? I mean this, that at one time in this country we had a great movement. It was so great before the Civil War and just after the Civil War that with a little more push, it could be today the predominant school of medicine. And when I say medicine, I do not mean drugs. Actually, the word medicine means the caring of the sick, the education of people concerning the laws of life and health. Doctors in the old days that graduated as natural hygienists were doctors of medicine. They were doctors of medicine and hygiotherapy. We call it today natural hygiene. And this renaissance is being felt throughout the world. I have traveled extensively in the last year, and I've seen the palpable evidence of what people want, what people need. Actually, without coming before you as one of the saviors of modern times, I must say that there is no movement more basic, no movement more based on truth, no movement that can do greater good to humanity than natural hygiene. It takes in not only health, but takes in all of life. It places man in normal relationship to everything that is natural to him. If a man has neurotic disturbance, or a man has some social discord, problems of all kinds can be eradicated by an application of natural hygiene principles. And we hope in this week to give to you some of the principles that have been on this earth, some of them for 2,000 or 3,000 years, but formulated into a system over 120 years ago. And I wish to dedicate part of this, in behalf of the natural hygienists, the professional men, part of this convention to these old-timers, the old pioneers, the saints in this movement, such as Sylvester Graham, Isaac Jennings, T.L. Nichols, James C. Jackson, and Dr. Russell Trawl, Alcott, and many more, who put down the foundation that has given us the principles that we preach to you today. Now, I'd like to introduce the man of the evening. I just received a telegram that Dr. Anderson will not be here. He's taking a plane at 8:30, so he won't get here until about midnight. But you have a treat in store for you, and I think the man who is going to speak in this place will give you something to think about, something to entertain you, and something to inspire you. I'd like to present my good friend, Dr. Shelton.
Thank you, Dr. John Curcio. Frankly, I don't like this thing. I'd rather talk directly to you. But we're outside this evening, I hope for the last time. And I have to compete with these waves and wind over here, so I'll do the best I can with this thing. I do not know whether I can do as well this evening as Dr. Anderson could have done if he were here, but I'll do my best. Life is a master drama of nutrition and drainage under the control of the nervous system. Now let me stop and explain a little bit about what I mean by that statement. And I think before I'm through with it, I'll give you a rather broad basis and a comprehensive basis for a program of living that will not only enable you to get well if you're sick, but it will enable you to remain well after you get well or if you're already well. Nutrition is the sum total of all of the processes by which raw materials are converted into living structure. This simply means that it is the materials by which growth and development, repair and maintenance of the body, and reproduction are accomplished. To carry on the overall process of nutrition, the body is equipped with a whole series of organs that have as their functions the taking of the raw materials represented in water, air, light, and food, and converting these into usable substances, taking them into the bloodstream, and carrying them to all parts of the body so that they can be taken up by the cells of the body and converted into living structure. I do not intend this evening to give you a lesson in anatomy and physiology, but I do want briefly to recount a few of the organs and structures and systems and functions that are involved in this overall process of nutrition. We take in food in the mouth and we chew it. That is the first step in the digestion of food. We swallow it and it gets into the stomach, where it undergoes more of the digestive process. We have about 5 million minute glands embedded in the walls of the stomach that are engaged in secreting digestive juice to digest that food. After gastric digestion, our stomach digestion is completed, it passes into the small intestine, where it comes in contact with other juices. The pancreatic juice from the pancreas, the intestinal juice secreted by glands in the walls of the intestine, and the bile secreted by the liver, all aid in the further reduction of that food to simple compounds so that it can pass into the bloodstream and be utilized. All of these structures, these glands and various structures that I have named, are part of the digestive system. The digested food passes from the small intestine by a process called absorption into the bloodstream. It is picked up by the blood and carried to the liver by the portal circulation. There it undergoes further changes, and then it is thrown back into the blood to be circulated throughout the body. This is what takes place with our food. But this is only one of the raw materials of life. Water is another. We take that in by mouth also, and it passes through the stomach and passes into the bloodstream through the intestines, as does the digested food. But water requires no digestion. Another of the raw materials of life is air. We take it in through the nose,
properly, some of us take it in through the mouth, but we should take it in through the nose. It is passed from the nose down through the respiratory tract into the lungs, where it is picked up by the blood. And it is carried by the blood to all parts of the body so that the cells may make use of the air. Now all of these structures that are involved in breathing, the nose, the bronchial tubes, the bronchioles, the lungs, the respiratory muscles, the walls of the chest in other words, and the diaphragm, are all part of the body's nutritive system, just as are the digestive organs. There is one other structure in the body that is part of the nutritive system that is not commonly thought of as being part of the nutritive system, and that is the skin. It is through the skin that we absorb and utilize the rays of the sun, and they're very important in blood building, in bone building, in nerve building, and so forth. So we should properly classify the skin as part of the body's nutritive system, and sunshine is one of the raw materials of life. When all of these substances have been taken into the bloodstream, there are glands in the body, known commonly as the ductless glands or the endocrine glands, that secrete substances known as hormones, that the body uses in making use of these raw materials and converting them into tissue and into substances such as other secretions and so forth that are needed in the body. These glands, too, are part of the body's nutritive system. In addition to that, we have the blood, we have the arteries, the veins, the capillaries, and the heart that are engaged in circulating all of that digested material and water and air to all parts of the body, so that it too, that is the blood vascular system or the circulatory system, is part of the body's nutritive system. It is by means of the digestive system, the respiratory system, the skin, the circulatory system, and the endocrine system that the body is nourished, that it is enabled to grow, to repair itself, and ultimately to reproduce itself. And this is the grand overall function of nutrition. Drainage is the sum total of the processes by which waste material is drained away from the cells, carried to the organs of excretion, removed from the blood, and finally removed from all contact with the body itself. This process is almost as complicated as that of nutrition, and also involves the activities, separately and severally, of numerous organs and structures in the body. The first part of the work is done by the lymphatic system, which is a subsidiary circulatory system. This lymphatic system picks up the waste matter from the cells and carries it along through little channels that gradually merge one with the other, forming larger channels, and carrying it back towards the heart, and just before it reaches the heart, it is emptied. That is, it is emptied from the lymphatic system into the blood vascular system and becomes again part of the blood, containing not only the food material and so forth that has not been used by the cells and the water, but also the waste matter from the cells and any other foreign matter that may have been taken into the body, foolishly or otherwise. The blood then circulates, in circulating through the body, passes through the liver, which takes out part of the waste matter and manufactures bile out of it, makes it into a substance that can be used again in the digestion of food. It passes through the kidneys, which takes out part of the waste matter and converts it into urine and sends it into the bladder. It passes through the walls of the colon, where little glands take out part of it and throw it into the colon. It passes through the lungs, where the lungs take out the carbon dioxide, that is the cells of the lungs, and they cast it into the air cells. As it passes along through the lymphatic channels, it comes in contact with little bodies of structure known as lymphadenoid tissue, or what you know perhaps as lymph glands. To the physiologist, they are known as lymph nodes, lymph nodules, and tonsils. One of the larger lymphatic glands of the body is known as the vermiform appendix. It's one of the surgeon's best friends. The tonsils in the throat are of the same structure, and they have also been one of the surgeon's best friends. Actually, they're part of the body's first-line defenses, and they have as one of their functions the arresting of toxic material in the lymph, and by a chemicalization process, rendering it less toxic or non-toxic and preparing it for elimination by the kidneys. They are part, then, of the body's drainage system. You'll notice there's an overlapping of systems here. The liver is part of the nutritive system, it's part of the drainage system. The circulatory system is part of the nutritive system, it's part of the drainage system. The respiratory system takes in oxygen, that is, it's part of the nutritive system. It throws out carbon dioxide. In other words, it's part of the body's drainage system. Now, after urine has been passed into the bladder, it may lie there in the bladder for an hour or for 15 hours before it is passed out. The process of passing it out is the process of voiding. It is not a process of elimination. Elimination takes place when the waste matter is removed from the blood. This means that when the kidneys take the waste matter from the blood and pass it down to the bladder, it has been eliminated. When it is passed out of the bladder to the outside world, that is the act of voiding. It is part of the process of drainage, but it is not part of the process of excretion or elimination. In the same manner, when glands in the wall of the intestine take material from the blood and cast it into the intestine, that is the process of elimination or excretion. When an hour later or 3 days later you have a bowel movement, that is voiding, and you void that which had been previously eliminated. In other words, while bowel movement is part of the process of drainage, it is not a process of elimination. And those of you who have been in the habit in the past of thinking that by taking an herbal laxative, or a CC pill, or some other laxative, or cathartic, or purgative, or taking enemas and colonic irrigations and things of that kind to force bowel action, if by that you think you have been increasing or forcing elimination, you have been kidding yourself. You have been merely forcing voiding, but you have actually retarded the process of elimination. Any forcing measure of that kind will actually lessen the function, the legitimate function of the organ that is being forced, so that by forcing bowel action, you are actually decreasing elimination. In the same manner, those of you who have been drinking large quantities of water, thinking thereby to increase elimination through the kidneys, have been kidding yourselves. It's true enough, you've passed out a larger volume of urine, but it has been water, not waste matter. And when you have taken sweat baths with the idea that sweating is an eliminating process, and that by taking sweat baths or forcing sweating in any other way, you're increasing elimination, you have been, again, kidding yourselves. In the first place, sweating is not an eliminating process. Its primary purpose is that of heat regulation. And in 1,000 parts of sweat, there is less than 5 parts of solid matter, and that is chiefly common table salt, which shouldn't be there anyhow. Those of you who are eating table salt, who imagine you couldn't live without it, are kidding yourselves again. You don't need it. You can't use it. It is a poison, and the more you use of it, the more you're damaged by it. Don't wait until you're nearly dead and some physician says, well, now you've got to give up salt. You've got to go on a salt-free diet. Quit beforehand and save yourselves a lot of trouble. But to get back to sweating, you would have to sweat 4 gallons to get rid of less than 1/4 ounce of urea. Now imagine what you would look like if you lose 4 gallons of water from your tissues. If you can't get a graphic picture of it by just closing your eyes and thinking about it for a minute, think of the well-known dried prune that's on the market. And that's just about what you would look like when you lose 4 gallons of water from your tissues. And in doing so, you would get rid of such an insignificant amount of waste matter that it wouldn't be worth the sacrifice. You could lose a lot more waste matter by missing a few bites at the next meal.
I know it would kill you to miss a few bites, but it's actually the more sane way of approaching the problem. Miss a few bites at that next meal. All right, now, some of the ductless glands, such as the suprarenal glands and the thyroid glands, are also involved in the preparation of materials for elimination from the body. But you can see from what I have said that the process of drainage, the overall process of drainage, carrying the material away from the tissues, carrying it to the organs of excretion, excreting it from the bloodstream, and finally voiding it from the body, is a rather complex process involving the activities of a number of organs and structures of the body. Now, all of these processes, both the nutritive processes and the drainage processes of the body, are controlled by the nervous system, composed of the brain, one of the most unused organs in man's body, the spinal cord, 12 pairs. That's some more competition we wouldn't have if we were inside. 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 21 pairs of spinal nerves and various plexuses and ganglions in the trunk of the body, such as the solar plexus, the cardiac plexus, the hepatic plexus, and so on. And from these structures go nerve fibers to all parts of the body. So true is this, that it has been said that if it were possible by some magic process to dissolve the human body of a man, the whole body of a man, except his nervous system, and leave that intact, so perfect would be the replica of that man that his friends would still be able to recognize him. That will give you some idea of how completely and thoroughly the nervous system ramifies the body. That will give you some idea of its importance in the control of function in the body. And it will lead you to understand the importance of maintaining at all times the integrity and the functioning ability of that nervous system. If the nerve to the arm is severed, you have a paralyzed arm. It neither feels nor moves. No matter how much you try, it doesn't move. And as time goes on, it atrophies. You've got nothing left but skin and bones. All the muscles are gone. It's just wasted away. It is no longer useful, and it wastes away. All because nerve control is no longer present. Now that will give you some idea of the importance of nerve control. Not an organ in your body will function without that nerve control. Your heart won't beat, your stomach won't digest food, your glands won't secrete digestive juices, your arteries will not contract and expand to control the volume of circulation to one part of the body or another. The liver won't function, the kidneys won't excrete urine from the body. Nothing goes on without that nerve control. So, the importance of the nerve control of the two grand overall functions of life, nutrition and drainage, is perhaps greater than you have ever realized. And this will give to you an understanding of how important it is to maintain at all times not merely the integrity of the nervous system, but its functioning capacity. Now, we do not know what nerve energy is, and we do not have to know what it is. Neither do we know what electricity is. But an electrical engineer does not have to know what electricity is in order to give you electric lights and electric power and electric heat and to send messages through the air and pictures through the air and give us the other phenomena, electrical phenomena that are so common to us in modern life. He needs to know the methods of generating electricity, the methods of transmitting it, and the laws and conditions of its operation. And that's all we need to know about nerve energy. We need to know how it is generated or recuperated. We need to know the laws of its operation, and we need to know the conditions under which that nerve energy operates to produce its many and varied results. When we know this, then we have the same control, the same accuracy of control over our functions of life as the electrical engineer has over electrical phenomena. We do not have yet as perfect knowledge of nerve energy and the conditions of its recuperation, of its dissipation, of its expenditure, as the electrical engineer has of electricity. But we are rapidly approaching that point. And the time is not far distant. It may be 20 or 30 years off, but it is not far distant when we will have the basis for a perfect science of health, or rather a science of life. And in this particular, let me call your attention to a fact that I believe most of you already know, but you've never given any thought to it. You know, we often know many things without realizing that we know them, without thinking about them, without making any use of them. All of you know something of gravitation. And I'm sure that every one of you understands that it is the same law of gravity that sends the balloon upward under one set of conditions and that brings it back to Earth under a changed set of conditions. There is no change in the law. There is no change in gravity. There is a change in the conditions under which that law operates. The same law of gravity that floats a ship under one set of conditions sends it to the bottom of the ocean under another set of conditions. Without a change in the law, without a change in the force of gravity, but merely with a change of the conditions under which that gravity operates, you get opposite results. The same way in chemistry. The same chemical affinity that preserves a stick of dynamite under one set of conditions explodes it under another set of conditions. There is no change in the chemical affinity or the laws of chemistry. There is merely a change in conditions under which those laws operate. Now, the same way in life. Under one set of conditions, we have health, and under another set of conditions, we have sickness. There is no change in the laws of life. There is no change in the forces of life. There is simply a change in the conditions under which those laws operate to produce their many and varied results. When once we know the laws of life, once we know the conditions of their operation, then health or sickness may be ours by choice and not by accident or fortuity, as is largely the case today. Most people go through life today afraid of disease. And take it from me, there are whole professions in the country that spend a large part of their time frightening the people of disease. You have just ended a month during which the racketeers who profess to be fighting cancer have been pleading with you to give to help fight cancer. And what are they saying to you? They say, you may be next. Cancer may strike anybody. Now, there isn't any such thing to do any striking. Cancer is not an entity that exists apart from the living body that can strike anything. Cancer is merely a growth within that body, and it is made up of the tissues of that body itself. It results from a change in the conditions under which the laws of life produce their varied results. Are you afraid of cancer? Have you been donating liberally to the Cancer Fund? And I'll tell you that most of that money goes to pay the expenses, the overhead and the salaries and commissions of the people that collect it. And the balance of it is spent in torturing animals, literally torturing them. What for? going to tell you a little story. I once had an artist draw a picture for me to run in my magazine. I got a lot of criticism about that picture. Some people didn't have a sense of humor. They thought I was desecrating a sacred subject. It was a picture of a cross. And on that cross we had a dog. And the abdomen of the dog was ripped open. And the intestines of the dog were hanging out. And underneath that cross, underneath that dog, I had these words, paraphrasing Jesus' statement in the Bible: "My life I give for the life of the children." We are trying to torture salvation for mankind out of the animal kingdom. I mean, they are trying it. And they're begging and pleading with you to give them more money to carry on more of those fiendish experiments upon animals. And they've been carrying it on now for 75 years with cancer. And they are no more near a solution to the cancer problem today than they were 75 years ago. Oh, I know they keep telling you that they're on the verge of a discovery and they're going to have a cure soon. In 1922, one of the Mayos said we'll have a cure for cancer in 2 years. 31 years have passed and they still don't have it, but they're still promising. There are no greater promisers than those who have nothing to give. Near my place in San Antonio, just a short distance away, there is a large research foundation. And they do all kinds of research. And they've got one man out there, they imported him from England to do cancer research. And he spent about 3 years now in cancer research. When he first came there, he got some rats. The proper study of mankind is rats, Pope to the contrary notwithstanding. He got some rats, and he grafted some tumors on them. And one day they invited the people to come out and go through that research foundation. And there they had those rats, suffering the tortures of Dante's Inferno, lying there for the people to look at. Some of them with great tumors that were bigger than they were. Some of them practically unconscious. Others still able to suffer more. And that was the end of the cancer research, not the end of the spending of the money. He spent the rest of his time for the next 2.5 years with his feet propped upon the desk, leaning back, reading books on diseases of the dog, getting paid for cancer research and studying diseases of the dog. Well, every once in a while they publish a report, tell about the progress. You know how committees are when they are called up before a group and they're supposed to report on what they've done toward carrying out the mission that they were appointed to carry out. They get up, and when when they haven't done anything at all, they get up and report progress. And then they sit down. Well, that's what the cancer researchers do. They issue published reports reporting progress and asking for some more money so they can make some more progress, so they can ask for some more money, so they can make some more progress, then ask for some more money, and it keeps on. It's a bottomless pit into which you keep pouring your money. Year after year, millions upon millions of dollars go down the shaft into that bottomless pit of research. And year after year, you keep getting promises of what we're going to do, what we're on the verge of discovering. And every time they announce a discovery and then try it out, it proves to be a disappointment. Why? Because they're still trying to torture human salvation out of the animal kingdom. They're seeking for a new plan of vicarious salvation, a means of enabling you to eat, drink, and be merry and not have to pay the fiddler. If you will maintain at all times a high degree of nerve energy, a high standard of nervous energy, And I'm going to discuss that problem with you in one of my subsequent talks. This talk tonight here is a rather pinch-hitting talk. Dr. Anderson was supposed to talk this evening. I'm going to discuss with you ways of conserving your nerve energy so that you can be sure that at all times you will have an abundant reserve of nerve force on hand to meet not only the ordinary conditions of life, but the extraordinary emergencies of life that arise from time to time in the lives of everybody. If you will maintain a high standard of nervous integrity, and how can you do it? Briefly, I'm going to say, without encroaching upon my coming lecture, that you can only do it by first-class habits. I'll discuss these in detail for you at that lecture. If you will do that at all times, you can guarantee efficient function of every organ and every structure in your body so that you'll have adequate nutrition and adequate drainage, and thereby maintain purity of your bloodstream, of your lymph stream, and of your tissues. And that means health. You don't need to kill any rabbits, nor torture any rats, nor any monkeys or guinea pigs, nor do you need to make a guinea pig of yourself or permit yourself to be turned into a guinea pig and be used as a test animal in trying out some new discovery that's still in the experimental stage. You'll notice, if you watch the papers very carefully and closely, that all of these new discoveries of new cures and new preventives, that as soon as they pass out of the experimental stage, they pass into limbo. And another new discovery comes into the experimental stage, only to pass into limbo. You don't need to permit yourselves to be made into guinea pigs. And it is true. Maybe you've never thought of it, but stop and think for just a minute, and you will realize that it is true. That every new drug, every new serum, every new vaccine must be tried out in experiments. They call it clinical tests, but it actually means nothing more than experimenting upon human beings before they are even partially sure that it has any value. You people, if you have been patients in the hospitals, in the clinics, and even in private practice, are almost every one of you sure to have been at one time or another the subject of a dangerous experiment. Some of you may be suffering now from the effects of such experiments. I often question whether or not human vivisection is not more common today than animal vivisection. Whether or not there is not actually more suffering in human beings today produced by that same wholesale experimentation that is being carried on upon human beings than is being produced in animals by vivisection. You're nothing but a guinea pig. The only difference between you and the guinea pig is that he doesn't willingly submit to the experiment, and he doesn't pay his torturer to do it. Some of you may have paid somebody as high as $1,000 to perform a dangerous experiment on you. Oh, they rarely tell you that they're experimenting. They tell you, oh, we've got a new drug, it's a wonderful cure. Do you remember the days when the sulfur drugs were wonderful cures? Do you remember the experimental stage that it went through, and the thousands that were killed by it, and the millions who had their livers and their nervous systems ruined by it, who had their red blood cells destroyed by it? And then do you remember that it was followed immediately by penicillin? And have you read the magazines during the past year and the newspaper accounts of the damages to the human body that penicillin is causing? The experimental stage is about over. Penicillin is due for limbo. And the only question that's bothering them now is, what are we going to do when we give up penicillin? We have already cast so much doubt upon the old drugs that we used to use in yesteryear, and we haven't got any new miracle drug to fall back upon. What are we going to do? I wish they would develop at least 5 or 6 more miracle drugs. You know why? Because I think that the more they boost the miracle drugs and the greater the failure of them, the more the public will wake up to what's going on. They only need about 2 or 3 more miracle drugs. They're complaining very bitterly now about the public's loss of confidence in them. And they're trying to blame it on what they say is 5 or 6% of the profession that isn't behaving like it should. I say that if they put all of that 5 or 6% of the profession that isn't behaving as it should, according to their standards, if they put them all to death tomorrow morning and let the rest of the profession carry on in a perfectly ethical way, perfectly honestly, and with all the intelligence they have at their command, that so long as they continue to poison the sick because they are sick, they will not regain public confidence. Because all over this country the people are beginning to wake up to the fact that poisons are not the proper means with which to restore health. They are not the proper means with which to assure good nutrition. They are not the proper means with which to assure adequate drainage. And they are not the proper means with which to restore or to maintain normal nerve energy. They are not the proper means with which to remove the causes of disease. 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 And let me tell you this. I want you to let this sink in deep into your consciousness. I want you to take it home with you and think about it. And I want you to keep thinking about it. Every time somebody comes along and offers you a new cure, and I don't care what it is, keep this thought in your mind. Curing disease without removing its cause is exactly like trying to sober up a drunk man while he continues to drink. Now, I know that when the average doctor of the many schools comes into your home to see you when you're sick, he examines you, he looks at your tongue, he looks at your tonsils, he looks in your ear, he looks in your eye, he thumps your chest, he thumps your abdomen, he taps you on the knee, he does a few things like that, and when he gets through, he makes a diagnosis. But has he found the cause of your trouble? No. And when he hasn't found the cause, he can't remove it. And if he can't remove it, he can't do anything of value in restoring you to health. Some years ago, I was lecturing in New York City, and the medical profession there didn't like the things I was saying. I don't blame them. I don't like the things they're doing. Nonetheless, they engineered a little scheme there, and they got me sent to jail. I spent 30 days in Rikers Island prison. Now, can you imagine me practicing medicine standing here talking to you tonight? Is this practicing medicine? No. Well, that's what they accused me of, practicing medicine without a license, and that's what I was doing, lecturing. And they had 2 of their stool pigeons in my audience. One of them testified that I claimed that I had certain combinations of food that would cure certain diseases, and the other one backed her up in it. And I brought members of the audience into the courtroom to testify that I made no such statement. But it didn't matter. We were up before that great American institution, the jury. Only in this case it was composed not of 12 good men and true, but of 3 Tammany Hall judges. And they make up their mind what they're going to do before the case comes to trial and before they have ever heard any evidence. So I was sent to jail for 30 days. Well, while I was in jail, I thought I might as well make the best use of my time as possible. So I've got a copy of Dr. Alexis Carrel's famous book, Man the Unknown. And I read it. And it's one of the finest books that was ever written, because on every page it is a candid confession by one of the leading members of the medical profession that they don't know anything. But the part that struck me most about the book was the fact that Dr. Carrel would discuss the evils of a certain thing, and then he'd say, we don't know how to avoid these evils. We don't know how to remedy this condition. Perhaps if we get enough money to carry on research with, in 100 years we may have a serum that'll enable us to do this without suffering. For example, he pointed out that white flour is inferior to whole wheat flour. But he thought that in 100 years they might have a serum, providing they get enough money to carry on enough research with, they might have a serum that they could give you that would enable you to eat white flour without suffering the consequences of such deficient diet. Then he pointed out that foods grown on land fertilized with animal manure are very inferior foods and that are not healthful to eat. But he says we don't know what to do about it. Perhaps if we get enough money to carry on enough research, in 100 years we may have a serum that will enable us to eat that kind of food and not suffer. That was the idea. I read the book. When I finally closed it, I said, I'm afraid that if I went to Dr. Carrel with a tack in my heel and complained of the pain, he'd look at it and shake his head and say, I'm very sorry, but we don't know what to do for a tack in the heel. Perhaps in 100 years from now, if we get enough money to carry on research with, we'll have a serum that will enable you to have a tack in your heel without hurting you. In the meantime, I'll remove your foot. Now, what is so simple? If whole wheat flour is superior to white flour, what is so simple as to say, the logical thing for you to do is to use the whole wheat flour? No, we don't know what to do. We need a serum, and we need money to carry on research so we can discover that serum. Never once in the whole book was it ever said that it is necessary to remove causes. And only a short time passed when another famous medical man of the country carried an article in the Journal of the American Medical Association in which he made this statement: removing cause is quackery. Insofar as I know, there has never been one medical man in the country that has ever written to the Journal of the American Medical Association protesting against that statement. Removing cause is quackery. I think that Dr. Carrel thought so too. He would much rather remove my foot than to remove the tack. Keep it in mind, as I asked you to a while ago, when somebody offers you a cure. That curing disease without removing cause is like trying to sober up a drunk man while he continues to drink. It's like trying to cure the tired following work or exercise without rest. It's like trying to restore potency to a sensualist without requiring him to give up his sensuous indulgences. It's like trying to cure the effects of gluttony with a serum or a drug while the patient is still making a hog out of himself. It is like trying to cure the effects of worry while the patient continues to worry. The effects of fear while the person is still in a state of fear. You cure the trouble without removing its cause. That's quackery. I mean, removing that cause is quackery. Well, that's what they say, at least. The causes that have impaired your nutrition, the causes that have impaired the drainage processes of your body, that have, in other words, brought on a condition on the one hand of partial starvation and of self-poisoning on the other, are responsible for your suffering. And so long as those conditions are permitted to go on, so long as the causes of impaired nutrition and of impaired drainage are permitted to operate, you are going to continue to be sick. There'll be ups and downs in your illnesses. Some days you'll say you feel fine. The next day you'll say you feel terrible. One day you'll have a cold, and the next day you will imagine you have been cured because you took some antihistamine, or a dose of quinine, or an aspirin, or a hot foot bath, or a mustard bath, or something else. I know some people who treat colds by hanging their hat on the newel post of the balustrade of their stairway and going to bed with a quart of whiskey and staying there until they use up all the whiskey. Now, of course, they don't cure colds that way, but that's the thought. But it doesn't matter what happened to you, you imagine, or what you did while you had the cold, you imagine that cured you. Now, the fact is that colds last anywhere from an hour to 2 or 3 weeks, and the average cold lasts about 3 days. No matter what you do, or if you don't do anything. You can start out from the city of New York in the wintertime in an open car without a heater and drive across the continent to Los Angeles or San Francisco, and you can have a cold when you leave New York. And by the time you get over there, without doing anything except driving long hours and getting insufficient sleep and eating too much and perhaps smoking on the way, by the time you get there, you'll be free of your cold. Or you can stay at home, go to bed, keep warm, and stop eating for 2 or 3 days, sometimes for only 1 day, and you'll get well of your cold. Now, the difference in the two processes is in the first one, your cold will last considerably longer and you'll have much more discomfort. In the second one, that is resting and fasting in warmth, your cold will not last long and your discomfort will not amount to anything. They're very light. That's the difference in the two processes. Now, neither one of them cure a cold. Neither one of them remedy a cold. Neither one of them remove the cause of the cold. The cold is a process of vicarious or compensatory elimination. It is the process of removing cause. One of them simply permits that cold to accomplish its work in less time and more efficiently than the other. And you'll say, well, I took an aspirin and I got well. It must have cured me. You ask the physician if he has a cure for a cold, and he'll tell you no. You know, there's a common joke going around that if he can get the cold to develop into pneumonia, he can cure the pneumonia. There's a story about a waiter in one of the Los Angeles restaurants. A famous physician came in to get a meal, and the physician had a very severe cold, and he was coughing and sneezing and wiping his nose, and the waiter says to him, he says, "Doctor, isn't it too bad it's pneumonia you have? You could cure that." Well, now, they can't do anything more for pneumonia than they can for a cold, nor any other disease. Fact is, they admit that they can't do anything for the cold. They pretend that they can do something for pneumonia. And some of you are foolish enough, if you have pneumonia, or if you permit them to talk you into the thought that you have pneumonia, to let them give you some of their poisons. And then, if you recover, and most of you will, in spite of the poisoning, you will forever afterwards believe that those poisons restored you to health. They didn't. They don't. They can't. There's no such thing as poisoning a man into good health. For more than 3,000 years, the medical profession has been trying that. In that time, they have tried out more than 60,000 different poisons. And they're still searching for new ones. And at the present time, they haven't got a single poison that can poison you into good health from a single so-called disease. Why? Because poisons can't remove causes. They simply become added causes of trouble. The only way to get back to health is to remove the causes that have impaired your health, and then to provide the conditions, the primordial conditions of good health. These involve not merely the processes of nutrition and of drainage and of nerve control that I have discussed for you, but the processes of living. That is your plan of life that assures you proper nutrition, an abundance of fresh air, plenty of sunshine, proper rest and sleep, freedom from emotional disturbances, freedom from causes of excessive expenditure of nerve energy, so that you may maintain an abundance of nerve energy at all times. When you know these few simple conditions that you can supply or provide yourself and for the other members of your family, then you can provide health and strength and length of life for yourself and the other members of your family. If you're a parent and you have children, it is important for you to know the conditions that guarantee at all times an abundance of nerve energy, so that your organs of digestion and absorption, or in other words, your nutritive organ, and your drainage system can at all times keep that body of yours up to a high standard of health. Now, I know that sometimes you're frightened. Perhaps this summer they'll be frightening you about polio. They've already collected a few $1 million to carry on some more experiments on monkeys and children. Last year they inoculated 33,000 children in Houston, Texas with gamma globulin. Half of them got gamma globulin and half of them got what they called an ineffective substitute. The implication being that the gamma globulin is effective. When it was all done, they announced that they had found that it produced partial immunity, partial temporary immunity. They didn't tell us whether that temporary immunity lasted 1 minute or 1 day or 3 weeks. And they didn't even explain what they mean by partial immunity. How you can have polio and not have it, or not have it and have it, or how you have half polio and half something else, I have never been able to find out from their statements, but you have partial immunity, so they say. Temporarily. It lasts a little while, according to them. How do they know? They've asked you for a lot of money now to get and a lot of blood donations so they can make up some more gamma globulin. And what for? To inoculate your children with. And while they're going to get the blood for nothing, because the American public, if you appeal to them properly, are liberal givers of money, of time, of blood, and even of life itself. They'll get the blood for nothing. They'll take out the gamma globulin, and then you'll get it, or your child will get it, in the neck, of course, at a very high price. You get partial temporary immunity, whatever that is. In the first place, there is no such thing as immunity. God didn't make man disease-proof, and there isn't a physician on the earth that can do a better job. He hasn't got a vaccine or a serum or anything else that can make you disease-proof, and that's what immunity means. It means that he has suspended the law of cause and effect, and that hereafter you can laugh at causes because they won't produce their effects. That's what immunity means. It's a voodoo conception of life. It's a strange thing to me that these old voodooistic ideas that we have brought along with us through the ages from prehistoric times can be dressed up in an unintelligible jargon and handed out to the American people and to the people of the world as science. And yet it's being done. Science. The science of preventing disease without avoiding its cause, and of curing disease without removing its cause. The science of poisoning people into good health and poisoning them to keep them that way, without any thought given at all to the processes of life and the conditions upon which the normal carrying out of those processes depend. No thought at all about life and living. We'll give you this pill. We'll give you this serum. We'll remove that organ, and everything will be all right. But it isn't. Only recently it was admitted that the wholesale slaughter of the tonsils that was carried on in the past, and it isn't altogether dead yet, was a mistake. Think of the millions of tonsils they removed before they found that it was a mistake. Reminds me of a story I once read about a physician who sent a patient a bill for $10,000 for removing his eye. And when the patient complained about the bill being so high, he says, well, think of all the eyes I ruined in learning to perform that operation. Think of all the tonsils they removed before they discovered the simple fact that you can't take a man apart piece by piece and consign him to the garbage pail and thereby restore him to health. I have had patient after patient come to me who have had operation after operation. Their teeth were pulled. Their tonsils had been removed. Their appendices had been excised. In the case of women, their ovaries had been extirpated, and sometimes the woman tubes had been taken along with it. And some of them the gallbladder had removed. They had removed deviated septums. They had chiseled out their sinuses. And they had removed every part of the body that they could take out without producing instantaneous death. And in one of these cases, they finally said to the poor patient, these operations in this case had been going on over a period of 6 years. And the patient had grown progressively worse during that time, and after the last operation was performed, they had a patient on their hand that was a hopeless invalid for the rest of her life, with every movable joint in her body ankylosed. And they said to her after they performed the last operation, we don't know why you don't get well, we've removed all the causes. They had removed a lot of her organs, never touched the cause. We don't know why you don't get well. We've removed all the causes. Now that kind of removing cause is quackery, rather charlatanry. I think the profession ought to be shot at sunrise. I mean every member of it. I know that's a rather hard statement to make, and some of you will think that I'm a bit radical. I'm proud of the fact that I'm radical. If you look up the meaning of the word in the dictionary and get its true meaning, you will realize that it's the highest compliment that you can pay to any man to call him a radical. I believe in applying the axe to the root of an evil. I don't believe in lopping off a few of the branches. And that's radicalism. That's the genuine article. I believe in going to the root and applying the axe right there. Whether we're dealing with sickness or dealing with some other type of evil. We are never to have health that is worthy the name until we have learned to do two broad things. We must learn to avoid the causes that impair health, and we must learn to provide the causes of health. To put that differently, we must avoid the cause of disease and we must supply the normal requisites of life. And when we have done these two things, we have done all that can be done and all that needs to be done to guarantee us a long life of uninterrupted good health. As a matter of fact, I think that if we did it perfectly, they'd have to shoot us to get us off the earth. Now, I'm going to close, turn the meeting back to Dr. John Kershaw. But before doing it, I want to go back again to that Bible and remind you of a statement made there. I believe it was made by Jesus. And I want to emphasize the fact that it is as fully applicable to our subject here this evening as it is to anything in religion. He said, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." Now, when somebody comes along to you and tells you, "Oh, it's all right to smoke. Look at me, I smoke," but be sure you smoke the best brand of cigars. Or get the king-size cigarette so that it filters the smoke a little further. Did you ever stop and notice those cigarettes? One of them is just so long and the other is just a little longer. Take your scissors sometime and cut the king-size one off till it's the same length as the other, and then imagine that smoking that one. But don't cut it off. Burn it off. Light it and burn it down to where it's the same length as the other. And how much further is the smoke being filtered after it gets down there? And when both of those cigarettes are smoked back until they're just little butts, just long enough that you can hold them in your finger, how much further is the smoke being filtered from the king-size one than from the other? You're being kidded by a lot of clever advertisers who meet every year in a convention and pass resolutions declaring for honesty in advertising, and go home and spend the rest of the year lying to the public. Next year they come back and pass another resolution approving of honesty in advertising. Spend the rest of the year lying again. And no lie is too big if they can get away with it. No appeal to your emotions is too low and groveling if they can get away with it, so long as it sells goods, whether it's tobacco or beer, or a patent medicine, or an emasculated food such as white flour and white bread. They'll come along and they'll tell you, sure, it's all right to take these things, providing, of course, you take this pill. You can sow to the whirlwind without reaping. You can sow to the wind without reaping the whirlwind if you only take my pills, my vitamins, my mineral concentrates, my juices, my chlorophyll, or my amino acids, or my serums, or if you just have your tonsils removed, or, in other words, have your throat cut. You don't have to worry about what you're sowing because you aren't going to reap. As a matter of fact, the only fellow that's going to reap is the doctor, and he's going to reap a harvest at your expense. Now, keep that in mind. Don't let them fool you with these substitutes for a normal mode of life. And today, this thing that we call science, and I want to tell you this about these scientists. Even in these days of inflated money, you can buy them for a dime a dozen. The universities are turning them out in such great quantities that they're 10 cents a dozen with inflated money. And the research institutions, financed by the packing houses, the coffee companies, the cigarette companies, the makers of white bread, the manufacturing drug houses, and so forth, these companies pay their salaries, and they pay them to find the things that they want found. You can't depend on a thing they say, because, well, they're serving their Caesar and they're serving him because he's paying. And they can't serve two masters. They can't tell you the truth on the one hand and serve the man who's paying their salary on the other. But these fellows, they call themselves scientists, and their one object in life is to find substitutes. Substitutes for a normal mode of living. We've got a Department of Agriculture in Washington that is spending millions of dollars of the taxpayers' money finding ways to produce powdered foods. Now, during the war, the boys were served powdered eggs. They didn't like them. After the war was over, the English refused to accept any more of our powdered eggs because they didn't like them. But now the Agriculture Department says they have found a way to powder eggs so that they're tasty. Not so that they're wholesome foods, so they're tasty. And they found ways to powder various other foods, and they're spending more and more money to make more powdered foods. Why do you need powdered foods? What's the matter with the good old-fashioned foods that old Mother Nature has been turning out all these millions of years? That you and the whole animal kingdom have been doing fine on through that time. And then I see a lot of you out there who have these eye crutches stride your noses. Most of you have got them there because somebody bluffed you into the belief that you need them, not because you actually needed them. That's one of the crutches that science has provided for you. Today you can see hundreds of people walking around with a little thing sticking in their ear there. They call them hearing aids. The logical approach to problems presented by defective hearing and defective vision is to try to restore the ears and the eyes and the various mechanisms associated with these organs to a normal condition so you can see and hear without crutches. But it has gotten to the point now where it's almost sacrilege, or perhaps I should say heresy, to be found without glasses. Everybody wears them, even little children are wearing them nowadays. Nobody is trying to restore normal vision to the people. They're trying to saddle their noses with eye crutches. Why? Because there's plenty of money to be made out of the manufacture and sale of these crutches that further cripple the vision of the people who wear them. And on through the whole list of things, of substitutes for normal living and normal function that so-called science is offering us today, one crutch after another. Is there something wrong with your pancreas? Here is some insulin we took from some goats or some hogs here in the stockyards. We'll give you a shot of insulin. Do they tell you that your suprarenal glands are not functioning properly? Well, we'll give you some adrenaline. Is the thyroid functioning subnormally? Hypothyroidism? Well, then we'll give you some thyroxine or thyroid extract. No, we will not attempt to restore normal function to the thyroid, or normal function to the pancreas, or normal function to the adrenal glands. We've got a crutch, and we can sell you a crutch, and you can keep taking these shots at intervals during the day for the rest of your life, which will be a short one. Crutches, 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 as substitutes for normal living. That's what we're getting today from this thing that we call science. And if science, so-called science, has its way, the time is not far distant when we will have forgotten that there is any such thing as nature, or that there is any such thing as a normal way of life. We will have forgotten that there's any such thing as health when we reach that point too. It is up to you, every one of you, to make a choice today for yourselves. You can do it. You don't have to depend on somebody else. So long as you depend on the other fellow, you're that fellow's slave. If you let him do your thinking for you, he's going to think to his own advantage. Learn to think for yourselves. Get facts for yourselves. Be self-dependent and self-reliant. Not be always running to the office of the physician to have him give you a shot in the arm or to take something out of your body. I think Albert Hubbard well characterized those fellows when he said of them that they're always putting something into the body or taking something out of it. On another occasion, he put it in this way, that they're engaged in pouring down things, squirting in things, rubbing on things, and lopping out things. And by such means they expect you to have health, to be restored to health, and to have your health preserved. And you can't do it. And as long as you are going to depend upon such means and measures, you aren't going to have health. And I think that health is sufficiently important that we ought to give a little thought to it, a little time to it, a little attention to it. Why, I see girls get up in the morning and spend half an hour to an hour and a half just working on their face and hair. What doing for the most part? Trying to cover up the evidences of ill health. If they'd spend half that time every morning taking care of themselves properly, they wouldn't need all that camouflage. 2-coat jobs and 3-coat jobs they put on their faces that wouldn't be necessary. I remember once the 2 comedians came out on the stage in the show, and one of them asked the other one, "Do you know the difference between a sight and a vision?" And the other one said, "No, he didn't." He says, "I'll tell you." He says, "When a young girl comes out in the evening in all her glory and splendor, she's a vision. But when she gets up in the morning, she's a sight." Well, I was once, when I was a boy, I was doing some work in the backyard of a man, and a girl that I didn't know came out, and she had just gotten up, and she was really a sight. Blotches and pimples all over her face. She went back in the house, and she came out a little later, and she had it all covered up with a 3-coat job. I hardly recognized her. She was a vision. But underneath the calcimine and the grease, the blotches and the pimples were still there. She had only camouflaged it. And I say again, half the time spent in taking proper care of yourself would make all that stuff unnecessary. Of course, that would put the beauticians and the manufacturers of cosmetics out of business, but they ought to be out of business. I would much prefer seeing a healthy womanhood than one that's painted and powdered to high heaven. I think it was Ed Wynn who used to sing, "Believe me, if all those endearing young charms, so powdered and painted today, are viewed in the morning, we start with alarm because they have faded away." How true it is. Health is the only thing that doesn't fade away during the night. And I say to you again, and I'm going to quit now, let us give some attention to our health. Let us attend all of these sessions of the convention. Bring your friends and your relatives and even your enemies along with you. And if we have any enemies out there, bring them in. We'll try to make friends out of them. Bring them along. Give them an opportunity, too, to hear some truth about health, disease, and healing while this convention is going on. Learn something for yourself, something that you can make use of, something that you can carry with you through your life, and make that life a long, happy, healthy, and useful life. Thank you.